Hello everyone, and welcome to this lesson on SOP-based crowds using motion paths. So for the longest time, crowds in Houdini were being done using a dynamic simulation similar to a pop solver, and each agent was simulated like a particle. While this approach still has a lot of merits, it becomes difficult to control the behavior of individual crowd agents in a crowd simulation using this method. You also don't get the flexibility to tweak your agents without impacting the rest of your agents in real time. That's why in Houdini 20, SideFX created these motion path tools, which allows us to treat crowd movements as curves and edit them like curves as well. This lets us edit and perform actions on each curve individually or edit them relative to each other or other objects in your scene. So to get started, I have already imported a new agent that I will be using to demonstrate these motion path tools. We have a basic agent with a simple walking clip attached to it. We'll create a new geometry node. I'll call this crowd motion paths and jump inside it. I'll take a new object merge and bring in my agent. Go to your agent template and select your agent. Now to scatter the crowd over some area, it can either be a custom area or a predefined area. We take a crowd source node. I'll change the number of my agents to 50 and I'll add the crowd motion path node. Connect it to our crowd source node. The crowd motion path node is always going to be your first node in the crowd motion path setup. Here, you can set the frame range that you want your crowds to be animated in, plus assign them clips based on groups. Right now, we want them all to be walking. So in the clip names, I can add walking. Now we can see that the crowd motion path node has created some curves. These curves are directly connected to the paths that your characters will follow across the frame range. So let's play it once. Turn on real time toggle, and now our characters are walking. However, they are completely in sync with no offsets between them in terms of both animations or speeds. So to add that, in Houdini 21, we have an option to create a random node which randomizes an attribute called clip speed and passes it through a crowd motion path setup. So we can click on this dice icon and it will create an attribute noise node that you can use to control the speed of your crowds. So we can already see the paths of these agents being edited based on their clip speeds. Right now, the minimum value is zero point 0.5, which might be too slow, and the maximum value is 1.5, which might be too fast. So I'll change the max value to 1.25 and the minimum value to 0.75. Now, if we play it, we can already see some offsets between the characters. To further enhance the variation in your scene, we can use a clip time offset. So if we enable initial clip time and random clip offsets, this will give our agents a random clip start time so that all the clips start at different points of time. We have plenty of variations in our agents now. So the next thing I can see is that some agents are penetrating or coming too close to each other. To avoid that, we have another great node in the crowd motion path arsenal called crowd motion path avoid. So we can connect this to a crowd motion path node. Our first input are the motion paths which are the curves attached to your agent's movement. And the second output are the agents themselves. So now, the crowd motion path avoid has edited our curves so that these characters avoid each other while moving. We can also have them avoid a collision object. To demonstrate that, I'll take a box. I'll increase the size to 5 and I'll move it towards the end of our curves. We can connect this to the third input for our crowd motion path avoid. Now, we can immediately see that our curves are being edited and our agents are avoiding the box and moving away from it. Coming to the parameters of this node, we have a few parameters to control how the avoidance will work. First, we have iterations. The more iterations you have, the better the avoidance will be. However, you need to only increase this if you have some characters still penetrating even after the first iteration. Right now, the avoidance with the box is a bit too much. If you want your characters to have a closer, more realistic avoidance, you can reduce the obstacle distance. And now, your agents will take more time before turning away from the box. If you find your characters to be turning too fast, or you have some weird jitters in your animation, you can play around with the max turn rate to get appropriate values. Understanding and playing around with these settings is very important as you'll be able to control all aspects of your crowds if you understand these settings. So now our characters are avoiding more smoothly and turning away from the box smoothly as well. Now let's take another node called crowd motion path follow. Using this node, you can draw a single curve that all your agents will follow. This is great if you have particular streets or pathways for your agents to walk on. So I'll connect this after my crowd motion path avoid and I'll take a curve node. Now if I want these agents on the right to come up to the box and then turn away, I can simply draw a curve that follows that action and input that. Now in the group, I'll just select the agents to my right. We have a bit of harsh turns because our curve is quite rough. So we can increase the smoothing as well as the distance variation. It is usually recommended that we do crowd motion path avoid at the end. So I'll just switch the order of these two nodes. And we are already getting much smoother curves for our characters. We have one straggler character that is going in the wrong direction. This is where the crowd motion path edit node comes in. So you can take a crowd motion path edit node, connect it after the avoid. I will just select the point on the curve and using the mouse scroll wheel, I will increase the pin weight. Move it back. We can give it the same turn that all the other agents are following. It's very important to know that the crowd motion path edit node is not a procedural node. What that means is basically every time you change anything on top of the crowd motion path edit node, you'll have to reset this node and redo all the changes. That's why you should always use the crowd motion path edit node after you are completely happy with your simulation. To close out this lesson, as well as close off our basic crowd motion path setup, we'll take the final node that is always going to bookend your crowd motion path setups, called crowd motion path evaluate node. Connect it to our motion path edit. So while these nodes all had previews of moving crowds, none of the outputs would respect it, since they had separate outputs for motion paths and agents. Where if we take our agents separately and connect it to a null, we can see that these agents are still on T-pose. To actually create these movements that we need to use the crowd motion path evaluate node. If we connect this to a null, we should see our agents moving based on their curves and our motion paths being applied on the agents. Let's call this null out underscore crowd and merge this with our box for preview. Now, it's as simple as just copying this null, going to stage and pasting it in our SOP crowd import node. And if we render it, we have our characters coming in with all the materials applied to them, as well as the movement coming in from our crowd motion path toolsets. In the next lesson, we'll be talking about some transition tools that will allow us to use different clips during different parts of the animation. Hope you find this lesson useful. Thanks once again for watching and see you in the next lesson.